You're watching and listening to Conscious Evolution Media, shifting global consciousness at consciousevolutionmedia.com.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Kids Talk Foundation, a global nonprofit organization providing youth advocacy, television programming, and training services in the United States, along with comprehensive medical and educational services for the developing world, most recently in Kenya, Africa, where Kids Talk Foundation provides a feeding program, medical care, and educational services to over 1,300 young people each day. Please help our youth and place your donation. Go to www.kidstalk.org.
Are you in the entertainment industry? If you answered yes and you want to promote yourself, your passion, and profession, check out Creative Independent Artist magazines at CIAartists.com. Endorsed by Kids Talk Foundation worldwide.
Welcome to the Ninon Speaks Internet TV show. Ninon is an international entrepreneur and philanthropist who's become an influential and positive role model for thousands of people all over the world. Drawing on a rich tapestry of experience from her adventures both in front of and behind the camera, Ninon captivates, entertains, and inspires audiences from all walks of life. Her motto is, "Nothing happens without you." Now, here's your host, Ninon de Verde Rosa.
Welcome to Ninon Speaks. We have an incredible show, but then every show is an incredible show. I have the honor of always having wonderful guests on my show that present themselves, and we find out what they've been through since they're born, mostly, and what they've gone through, what they've done, what they have achieved, and it's amazing what we don't see from a lot of people, what they have achieved and what they've done. And we have a gentleman today, Stephen Jacobs, and he was actually born into the industry. When we talk about the industry, we talk about the movie industry and motion pictures, filming, and all the above. And of course, we just saw the Academy Awards, which was just absolutely amazing. I think it was one of the best they have ever put on. That's just from my point of view, and I think they also had the largest audience for watching the Academy Awards. But before we go any further, let's introduce our guest today, Stephen Jacobs. How are you?
I'm fine, Nina. How are you doing today?
I'm doing absolutely marvelous because you're on the show. And I've been reading your bio here, and wow, you're amazing what you've done, and always in an executive position.
Well, when I was younger, I wasn't at the top of the heap, but, for probably for the last half of my life, I've probably been in a leadership position, yeah.
Well, your father thought you were the head of the position. He enrolled you in what he was doing, which is the motion picture business and whatever relates to it. Did you always like it as a young child, as a young person growing up in this industry, which could be rather scatty?
Well, the strange thing is when I was really young, like 10, 11, in that area, I really wasn't aware that my dad was involved in motion pictures and that kind of an industry. But he said what probably triggered him that I would probably be good at it is that I organized the backyard plays as little kids with my brothers and all the other kids in the neighborhood, and always had casted myself in the role of MC. So he figured that it must have either been in the genes or I picked it up in the water or something.
You picked it up somewhere, but you know what you could have done? You could have started producing another Little Rascals. That was the whole road to He was a good friend of mine. You could have had a second episode of the Little Rascals. It would have been amazing.
I think all I would have had to done is just film my brothers and I and our friends. Just documentary would probably have been that. So.
There you go. And you come from Indianapolis, Indiana.
I was born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, and the interesting part is my father, who graduated from USC and was actually in the industry here as a lighting guy when he was young, because he was a ball player at USC, but he also got involved with the industry, obviously. Mm-hmm. And he got tired of waiting for a light prop man to move something on some set, and so that the guy could guys could move the heavy prop, which happened to be a piano. And he got tired of waiting for them to move the vase or the candelabrum or whatever it was. So he moved it himself, and oh boy, everything went sideways. So what he did was he was being he got suspended in California. And so he was being shipped out real quick to New York so that he could work lighting sets in New York when he stopped to see my grandparents who had moved to Indianapolis, and that's where he met my mother. And that's how I got born in Indianapolis. So.
Oh, but you didn't stay there for long.
No. I was, like I said, I was born and raised there. My father, during that time, World War II came along, and my father was a pilot in light bombers during World War II. And when he got back out, he came, of course, back in Indianapolis, and he got into automotive racing and did that for about 4 or 5 years. Wow. And then used his ability as a film producer. And the Indianapolis 500 that was actually recorded on film up till Wild World of Sports came in the 60s was all filmed by my father's company.
Oh my goodness gracious me. So, and then also you kind of did the same thing, because I'm reading here that you were actually in the Air Force, but you weren't on the Air Force, quote unquote, like everybody would think. You were actually in the Air Force at the Vietnam War, correct?
Correct. I was in there during that period, and the Air Force, in its good G2, saw that my background was in film and in photography and so forth, which I had grown up with, as you know, and so they gave me the job of recording live combat out of the back seat of F-4C Phantoms over North Vietnam, which I did.
So you would actually be in the airplane following probably an aircraft in front of you and filming what was going on with all the bombing and everything? Is that what you did?
Yeah, correct. What we did was I had a front seat pilot, and we flew in like aircraft, F-4C Phantom fighters. And when they would go to target, the fighters would go in and go ahead and release the ordnance on the targets. And we would fly canopy up. In other words, we would turn over, and we had to get canopy up so that I could film out of the canopy. And we would dive canopy up onto the site and wait till the ordnance went off, and then we'd pull off. And we'd do that maybe 3 or 4 times every time we went on a mission.
But wasn't that rather frightening? I mean, you must have had one of these big cameras with you, and were you flying quite low?
Yes. Well, you start high and then you come diving down low. But actually, it's strange you should mention that, because one of the best front seat drivers, pilots I ever had, when I met up with him, and he's another story, but when I met up with him about 2 years ago again, he said, the only thing that I always worried about you back there is if we got to get out of this thing, what are you going to do with that big motion picture camera in your lap?
Yeah, because you'd have to have a big camera.
I told him, I said, the first thing I'm going to do when that canopy blows is let that camera go out with it. So,
what was your most hair-raising trip of doing this extraordinary thing in the middle of the air with a great big camera, relying on a pilot and also relying on a plane in front of you as to what they're going to do, and for you to try to get the filming exact as to how they wanted it? What was your most hair-raising experience of one of those?
Well, if you know about film, the most thing that you're trying to do best is keep everything in the framing and composition of the frame as you do it.
Oh.
and particularly when you don't have control of the stick, but my pilots were good. They understood what we were trying to do and so forth. I think I never thought about hair-raisingness when we were doing the missions, because I was focused on getting a job done. I remember the first time I went up and the flak and stuff started to come up, I realized that this wasn't 12 o'clock high I was in, this was the real thing. But anybody who flies those that says they weren't scared or got a screw loose, I think the most harrowing time is not when we were actually doing the filming portion of it, because I was too busy to be concerned about that. But I think when the SAM missiles started to track us, and we would know that because it's radar, and we would start hearing the beeps in the headsets and so forth, and we would start seeing it on the scopes. So those were tricky little things to get around, but those were probably the most harrowing times.
Yeah, because that's kind of trying to dodge all the bombs and trying to dodge everybody and everything, so they're not going to hit you.
Well, there's two things. First of all, the STEM missile kind of reminds you of a telephone pole,
Uh-huh.
okay? And the second thing, which is probably the best thing about it, is it's not a heat seeker. It's controlled by somebody on the ground. So you have a chance of avoiding it, simply by doing some maneuvering. You can avoid it. So
So it's like playing dodge on cars up there.
kind of, yes.
Now, now I understand that you can actually see some of your filming in the Geographic building. Would that be in Washington?
National Geographic.
National Geographic?
Right. They actually, in my second tour, when I came over the second time, I was filming air rescue, and I flew about 117 missions with the air rescue guys over North Vietnam over a year's period. And my mission was to make sure that we could get film of live rescues as they happened. And I filmed a motion picture of a live rescue of two pilots that had been shot down in North Vietnam, and we had picked them up. Mm-hmm. And that was on a 16 millimeter film. Shortly after that, National Geographic selected me to shoot a still series, and I mean 6,000 pictures we took, hoping to get a live rescue for National Geographic. And I shot a lot of pictures of the HH-53Bs, which were that time the Super Jolly Green rescue choppers, in formation and on tankers, and a lot of things that go on before and after a mission. We never did get a live mission for National Geographic, so what they did is they used all of my pictures that I had taken for the, for refueling and that kind of thing. But what they did for the actual live rescue, they took my 16 millimeter and millimeter frame, and they blew it up and made a double page in a National Geographic magazine.
Oh my goodness.
And the frame they used was the pilot that was looking up at me as they dragged him in the door, and he looked up at me in the camera with this great big grin. And then they used 3 other frames of him coming up the hoist. So
well, as he must have been so happy. I mean, you just saved him.
Yes, well, it wasn't me. I was filming. No. It was the fellow.
Yeah, but you were there.
Right,
you were part of the action. A lot of these Vietnam aircrafts, people that were served in the Vietnam War, we've had a lot of problems with them, and I think we all feel that we haven't really taken care of them and looked after them. Especially a lot of it comes up, especially today. How do you feel about that? And did it affect you in any way when you had to film this and you actually saw, like you were rescuing these 2 men? It's got to do something to your heart and your head and thinking about these people that died.
Well, when you're in the service, all right, and you have people that you train with, and then you have people that you, in my case, fly with on a regular basis. And my brothers were both in the Army, and guys that they trained with, and guys that they were in the service with. There's more than just a nice little saying to the term band of brothers, because you become as close as brothers because you rely on each other for your very life. Okay.
Yes,
so
you do.
When that happens, there's a bond that happens there, and so when you lose one of them in combat, that's like losing a brother. So it doesn't demean it any less because you aren't blood brothers, you're combat brothers, but the feeling is just the same. So it's how you handle that, and you lose them in such a quick way. You're eating and drinking with them one day, and the next day they're not there. Mm-hmm. So that's a little trauma on you. But the worst trauma for all of us, I think, that I can speak freely of that, in my opinion, is the treatment that we got when we got back to the United States. That was pretty appalling. I was fortunate in the fact that my father and his circle of friends were not negative. They were very supportive. But as the general public, there was a lot of resentment that was cast on us. as the people who actually served over there. So I think that's the flaw that happened.
That's the flaw. Yes, because it was a war that should never have been, and I don't think anybody could really account for why was there a war, and what were they fighting for, and what was actually going on. And I think it's always been the question of, why do we all go there, and why do we lose so many men and brothers, as you say, and then sort of, coming back to a place where they're trying to cover it up and hide it like it never happened.
Well,
it's happening.
Right. Probably from a military guy's point of view, when I was in the military, okay, is that they politicized it. In other words, they didn't allow us to win the war. We could have probably won that war not much longer time than Desert Storm was won, if they had allowed us to do it. But they didn't. They played war, and they didn't allow the generals to run the war. If you're gonna go to war, then go do it and get it over with, because that's how you minimize your losses. But
yes,
they didn't.
I agree with you on that, and that's the type of man you are. And now we're going to move on, because you are definitely that type of man. Reading this bio, so now we're going to move on. You're now going into the real world out there of sort of making money and doing what you need to do, and you ended up in the accounts executive for the Merritt's company. And tell me a little bit about that. It seems like a large company that you sort of took charge of, and you had a tremendous amount of Motor Ford, you had Chrysler Corporation, you were involved with an awful lot there.
Right.
What was this all about?
Well, when Merritt's is a big company, and most people don't know it, but the gold watch giveaway at retirement of 50 years actually came out of Bill Merritt Sr., the very first Bill Merritt that there was. And his main business and his son's business, when I was with him, of course, was the fact that they did where you did so much and you accumulated so much points a company gave you for doing so much work, and then there was a catalog that you could get prizes out of, much like the S&H green stamps when we were younger, but on a much grander scale, much larger scale with companies. That's what they did. And what they did was they bought a film production outfit and laboratory out of St. Louis, where Merritt's is located. And when they did that, they were kind of new at it when they tapped me on the shoulder and asked me if I would go up to Detroit and go after that Detroit market. And I did, and I went up and when you're selling, you have to do a couple of key things, which I've always done. And first of all, you have to make a friend. People have got to know who you are before they'll trust you with things.
Yeah.
And that's basically what I did. Is I guess I was young enough.
You made a lot of friends. Well, you're the friendly type anyway. You're very people can talk to you. Yeah.
So I asked, how do you sell a General Motors, because I'd never been in a town before, and the guy says, well, if it's non-product in General Motors terms means it doesn't go into the automobile. So if it's non-product, then you have to go talk to the non-product guys, and before you can talk to them, you got to talk to the guys in accounting, the guys who do the purchasing and purchasing. Mm-hmm. So I walk in the General Motors building, and a guard at the bottom says, what can I help you with? I said, where's the big lobby? And I said, the lady says, can I help you? And I said, yes, I need to talk to the head of non-product purchasing. And she looked at me, and she says, do you have a card? I said, yes, ma'am, here it is. And she says, can you wait a minute? And then about 3 minutes later, a guy walked out with his sleeves rolled up, and he says, who's Stephen Jacobs? I said, I am. He says, what are you doing here? You have to have an appointment. I said, I don't have to have an appointment with. He looked at me again and says, come with me.
You said, well, I have an appointment now.
And we sat in, and I think he kind of liked my boldness. We became very good friends eventually, and he's the one who said, okay, go talk to this person, this person, and this person. And 6 months later, I had a multi-million-dollar contract with General Motors for film their automobiles that was used in their dealerships.
So have you always had this tenacity of sort of, I'm not going to say barging in, because you don't barge in. You sort of, knowing you as I know you, could sort of roll in with a smile on your face and sort of, get yourself acquainted to the surroundings and then make your move.
Well, if you don't show up, nobody really knows that you're around. No matter how good you are, no matter how charming you are, if you don't show up, nobody knows that you exist. And if they don't know you exist, then you can't expect them to know you. But I've never lacked being able to go up and talk and meet with people. Actually, a very quick story. my parents told me this story many times, that they would take everybody down to their favorite Italian restaurant, which was family owned. And as they were sitting at the table, my mother used to say, "Then you'd disappear. I couldn't find you." And we'd look around, and there where you were, table hopping, visiting with people at 5 and 6 years old. So apparently I've always had this ability.
Apparently you've never lost the touch. You could have been the youngest salesman out ever, 5 years old. So you probably were selling something anyway, trying to make some money like a lemonade stand. And then you've had your own companies. What is it like working with your own companies and working for somebody else?
Well, when you're working for somebody else, there's a certain set of rules that have been put in place by those people who own that company, who've set that company up. And you've got to, kind of play within those rules, and you have to work within those rules. And if you really want to make a significant change and you can't make that, or you don't like the policy or even the culture of the company, then it's difficult to change that or to turn it unless you are brought in as a president that is allowed to do that. That's one thing about working for other companies. Not that other companies that I work for haven't had great products and have done some great things. But when you work for yourself, when you have your own company and form your own company, then you're the one who sets the rules and you're the one who sets the culture. And I've always wanted to have, and I've always tried to give cultures, even in companies that I work for, where we worry about the people first, and we worry about, when I say the people, you got to worry about two things. You got to worry about your clients, but you also have to worry about the people who work for you. And if what you do isn't good for your clients and isn't good for the people that work with you and work for you, then it's not going to last. It's not good. It's not going to work.
Well, absolutely true. And I think I've noticed an awful lot of that in the past sort of 3 or 4 years, that a lot of companies are enrolling people into consultants and people to come in to organize their companies, number one, and to also get this personal touch and letting the employees know that they're wanted and they're needed and that they need them to encourage their sales. But if you don't actually have this communication with your employees, you're kind of a bit of a dead duck.
Well, eventually you will be, and here's the problem with that, and I think companies are beginning to realize something they didn't realize in the past, and that is every time you have an employee that is unhappy and goes and leaves someplace, it's going to cost you approximately 1.5 years of that employee's salary to retrain and bring somebody to bring them back up to speed to where that employee was. That's just simple number facts, okay? The other thing is that you can't glamorize one portion of your business that your employees are doing and ignore other things that are doing. The simplest clerk in the simplest position in the company can be devastating to your company if they want to be. If they're not happy and they're not wanting to do their job and they're not wanting to help that client or that customer, they can wreak havoc on you. You can lose customers. And negative, as you and I both know, whatever people's attitudes are, that's the attitude that they foster around them. So if people aren't happy and people are negative, that's what's going to foster. And that cancer can spread just as quick as happiness can spread. So.
Oh, I absolutely agree with you, because I have a big thing about being positive and being negative, and I've been asked many times about this negativity, and I said, well, I don't have such a thing. I don't even want to entertain it. As soon as I see it looming up somewhere, I kind of get my tennis shoes on and start running. Well, I don't want negativity around me. I love discussions, though. I love learning. I love discussions without them being negative, which I think communication is one of the greatest things. Do you also go around giving lectures and consulting to different companies?
I haven't done that in some time, and I imagine I could do that again. I like to do it because I think that a lot of companies that are run, and they're running well, they think, we're running really good now, and they've run well, and it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Sometimes it's the woods and the trees theory, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
Forest and the trees. And sometimes it's good for somebody come in with fresh eyes and say, that's really not working anymore, or you could get more out of this if you could do this. Yeah, I have done that in the past. I haven't done it for some time, but I'm always open to do that.
I think you're open for anything. I'm going to bring something up now. You at one time had a Magic Moon Arabian ranch. Now you
Yes.
were buying and selling Arabian horses, and it's funny because I used to own horses, race horses, and they used to run at Santa Anita and Hollywood Park and all these crazy places, and it was fun. And I did not know this, that you had an Arabian ranch. Wow.
Yeah, what happened is I got introduced to a sport that I saw called endurance riding. And endurance riding is actually a sport where you ride either in a 50 or 100-mile contest. And 50 miles normally has to be completed in 12, and 100 has to be completed in 24. Now, just so everybody can relax out there, it's very, very regulated by veterinarians. In other words, you have to check your horse in. The horse has to be proved and passed. There's a number that's chalked onto the horse. And then every 12 miles or so, that horse has to pass through a vet check, and the vet is totally, there's no argument. If the vet says he can't go on, he can't go on. That having been said, endurance riding I thought was quite interesting, particularly for me because at the time I didn't ride. So I thought, well, I'll learn to ride. So I started, and of course the first horse I got on was an Arabian horse, and I learned to ride a beautiful horse. He's 16 hands, which, as you know, is large for an Arabian.
Yeah, tall horse, yes.
But 16 hands, and he had been a hunter's jumper, and he was I finally wound up buying him. But I actually went to see his stud up at a ranch, and a guy took me out into a field, and a bunch of yearlings came running up and came all up around me, and a guy looked at me and shook his head. He says, they usually run away. They don't run too. This is amazing. And it was with all these yearlings and so forth, and I caught the bug, and I was a fairly accomplished rider by that time. And so I bought a ranch and thought, the toughest thing to do is to find good endurance horses, particularly for guys like me. As you know, I'm 6'4", I'm a pretty big boy, and
you are.
And Arabians are the horse of choice because of their physical abilities and so forth. But
they're big horses anyway. The Arabian horses are very big, sturdy, great horses.
Well, they are great horses, and I could go into a whole discussion about their shorter backs and the fact that their cardiovascular system is closer to the surface, which allows them to chill and cool quicker, which is perfect for long distance rides. But actually, 98% of all endurance horses around the world are Arabians. So, but I wanted a bigger Arabian. I wanted a 16-hand Arabian, and I went and covered several mares with Solomon, which was the horse's name that I like, Solomon, Solly as he was called, and covered several mares with Solly Stud, and got into the business and sold.
So you were actually breeding them as well?
Yeah, I bred them. I bred horses for big 16-hand, big-footed Arabians strictly for endurance. And I know that you were in the thoroughbred racing, but in the Arabian world, part of the Arabian rules is that you cannot race, even in endurance or on the track like you have. You can't race a horse until they're 5 calendar years old, actual calendar years old in the Arabian world.
Wow. Because when we race, we can have them 3 years and up. I think it's even 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. 3 years.
Yeah, 3 years most of them, but there could be 2 years depending, because in your world, in the thoroughbred world, your horses won at the first January, regardless when they were born.
Correct.
So, but in the Arabian world, if your horse is born in October, then it's all the way around to October. If it's March, then it's all the way around to March. So, but it's 5 years with Arabians.
So how long did you have this Magic Moon Arabians?
I had Magic Moon Arabian Ranch for about 10 years.
And where did you have it? Where was this ranch?
I was up in a place called Shingle Springs, California, and Shingle Springs is halfway between Sacramento and Placerville, or Lake Tahoe area. And the reason I had the ranch there is just off of Highway 50, and the reason I had it there was because of its access to the Tahoe region in the mountains. I have ridden most of of course, when there's not snow on it, most of those ski slopes that everybody skis down, I have ridden over that area up through all those mountains.
You know, it's amazing. I just want to let our viewers know that we're on the air with Stephen Jacobs on Ninon Speaks, and we're going through an incredible history of what Stephen has done in his life. And when we ever get bored and we ever sort of wonder what can we do next, take a leaf out of his book and just go ahead and do it, because that's
right.
usually what he does. So now we've gone through from the filming to the flying in Vietnam, to filming, and to the horses. And now we're going into a training program. I don't know how you managed to fit all this into your life, but you have. But now you started a training program. And I presume this was for executives and for people to go out into the world. What exactly was this training, and who were you training?
Well, it was a company that I put together with a really good friend of mine, a sharp guy called Ray Felix. And the name of the company was Felix Jacobs. And we sat down and we wrote a training program for salespeople, for professional salespeople. We had always said to ourselves, you know, there's no place to go to learn how to be a salesperson. Most sales education that they get is usually, okay, you're going to be in sales, go out with this salesperson or go out with this sales manager, and that's how you're going to learn. And so all you're going to learn is what that person knows. There wasn't any real place you could go to get a really good education on the fundamentals of selling. So we sat down and we authored an entire program. We had a 3-day program, a 2-day, and a 1-day program. And it educated people on how to be a salesperson and what it taught and those steps that you needed to take. And we authored the whole thing. We put it together, and it's all copyrighted, been all copyrighted and so forth. And we had the 3-day schools and so forth and so on. Most of the people who came to us were companies who brought to us their sales staffs, and we would train them. And we would do, normally they would do 3-day schools with us, and we would train them for 3 days. And it was always fun because sometimes they would send people who had been in sales for a while, and they would have what I would call the crossed arm crowd. You know, that crowd that sits in front of you with the crossed arms. Show me what you got, Kate.
Oh, yeah. Well, when they cross their arms, they're actually locking everything out. So it's always
Right.
a dangerous place to be when you're watching these people and they think they are not interested in anything I'm saying or doing. They're just here for the company.
Right. Well, our goal was to make sure we got the arms uncrossed and we got them moved up a little closer to the front of their seats. And we usually, yes, there you go. And we accomplished that pretty well when we started with our basic programs and so forth. And we did a lot of explanation as not only this is what you must do, but this is the reason that you do it. And we had a great reputation because we would advertise, by the way, that if you sent a salesperson to us, that we would increase their sales by 35% from the moment they got out of our school. Now, our record was about 60%. But we were afraid if we advertised 60%, nobody would believe us.
You could be in real big trouble if you did that. That would not be a good idea. What was your main object, though? What was your main thing to teach a salesperson? Because people that go into sales jobs that I feel, they seem to say they know it all and they know what's going on until they actually get in it. So what was your main thing to get them to really do more sales and to have more sales?
Well, believe it or not, there's several main things, but the first one that no one seems to understand is, and you've heard me say it even in this interview, the first thing you have to do is to make a friend. When you call on somebody, you have got to make a friend of them. You have to be interested in them. So you spend the first portion of your introduction with them is becoming their friend. Now, this is where the crossed arm guys would really raise their hand. Well, your second step is then see if the product or service that you have is a fit for that person. Why wouldn't you just do that first? Why do you have to make the friend first? And I said, well, when you make the friend, first of all, if they do have the fit, then it's a secondary thing in their mind because now they like you and they're going to look at you and your product, okay? But let's say they don't like you. Now they know you, even though it's not a fit. When they go to their next meeting or talk to the next person they're with and somebody says that they need that product or service, who do you think they're going to think of and who do you think they're going to refer you to? And that's how you'll pick up a referral, by making sure you do that first. By the way, you can never have enough friends.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. You can never have enough friends.
Yeah, that's the main. The second thing is to make sure that that's the next biggest thing that we told them is make sure that you have a fit. Make sure that that service or product really benefits that person. If it doesn't benefit that person, there is no sale. There, you might get money, but there's no sale because you'll never get another one again. And now the referral goes the other direction. Never get anything from this guy because it doesn't work.
That's interesting because a lot of people out there, and I think that's interesting for I know that just to sell something for the sake of selling it is not really a good policy. To sell it where they're going to actually tell their friends, say, listen, I was at this such and such and I bought this product and it's absolutely incredible, it's fabulous. They'll say, oh, well, where can I get one on? And so I guess that's a sort of, because most people just want to sell it and get out of there or wherever they are.
But you see, in reality, that's not a sale. That's a placement. That's not a sale. A sale is if it's good for the person who is getting it, okay?
Yeah.
Placement is just talking someone in falsely to get something. It's not a sale.
It's not a sale. So that's what that was another venture of yours. And then what did you do after that? You were kind of in distribution or something? What were you doing then?
Well,
so many things.
So after that, after we had that, and Ray and I had that company, then Ray was my main instructor. He was fabulous. Okay, and the man was absolutely a genius. He was fabulous, and so anyway, and Ray unfortunately lost his wife very suddenly, and Ray just couldn't go on. And so without him, and we decided, well, we'd shut it down. So it's strangely enough, any time that for some reason you're not focused in one direction and you don't go hide in a hole someplace, it's amazing how things find you. So being out and about, people that I knew in the telephony industry, and a guy came to me right after Ray, and he says, we've got a thing called VoIP. I said, what's VoIP? He says, Voice over Internet Protocol. Now, what you and I are doing today, this is all VoIP. This is Voice over Net Protocol. But back in those days, it was just starting, and there was no Skype. We couldn't do this. We had to do it over special gateways. It wasn't for the home. It was very expensive, hard to do. And I said, oh, that looks like a good challenge. Let's do that. And so I created, with some other friends of mine, I created a G-Telnet. And G-Telnet placed gateways, and of course it was at a commercial level because it wasn't applicable to the cost-wise. It wouldn't work in homes.
General public, yeah.
Right, it would work. Yeah. And we did that, and what's really amazing is put it between big offices that had several offices all around a state, a city, a country, even internationally. And basically we put the gateways at their PBXs, which is their phone systems in their office buildings, and interconnected them. So now they could all call each other any place in the world that they had another gateway, and they were off the public network, which means their long distance went away. Mm-hmm. So it paid for itself very quickly, very rapidly. And it gave a tremendous amount of data. And when it gives all that kind of detailed data, the attorneys absolutely loved it. Billable hours,
And then, you were into this, because that sounds like sort of going into the internet now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the first time I really, even though I knew years before that the internet was going to be something and was one of the first on my block to ever have a computer, but I knew the internet was going to happen. It's the first time I really kind of shook hands with the internet, with a product and a service as I was with handling. So yeah, that was when I realized that the internet. By the way, the biggest problem that we had was the bandwidth, which is still an issue today. But bandwidth, we couldn't even carry a conversation on without some drops in the talking until we got the bandwidth problem solved, which is what we're doing today. So.
Yeah, and it is the bandwidth, but it's amazing how far forward we have all become. And with this internet, did you ever think it would be this much? Did you ever think that we would actually, be doing what we are doing today?
Yeah, I actually I thought we would be doing this, and I actually think that probably not too far from now, Ninan, you will be doing it, and it won't be as complicated as it is today. I think you'll be sitting back, and you probably won't have to have a headset on. There'll be a microphone on your table, and you'll talk back and forth freely with me, and we'll see full screens of each other, and I think it's going to get just exactly what the industry does, and what we seem to be able to do in America is just make it better and better and better, and every time we find something, we find a way to make it even better and quicker, and somebody will find something faster than fiber optics. Somebody will figure a way to
what would you like to see? What would you like to see? Because also, well, now wait a second. Before I ask that question, you now, not that you've dropped anything, you have had the experience of a lifetime of many people actually all rolled up in one, but which is absolutely amazing, and I love it. But now you've started your own radio show, and
Yes,
you've been doing this for about 6 months, and you interviewed me, I think it was last week, and you were absolutely brilliant, and you've only done it for a short while. So what is your expansion, and where are you going now?
Well, I always wanted to have a radio show, and had talked about it for years. Never had the time to devote to having a radio show because, as you know, this takes some time. And so all of a sudden I had some time. I had done a few consulting jobs, and here I was in Las Vegas, moved from Orange County, California, to Beach over here in 2008, and then went and did a couple of consulting jobs around the country and helped some people. And then last summer I was at a business show at South Point here in Las Vegas, and there was a chap there from KLAV radio here in Las Vegas, the oldest station actually in Las Vegas. And he was standing there with his mic, and he saw me coming down, and he was obviously live, and looked at me and said, "Sir, how did you like the business show here?" And I went on and just told him how I liked it and so forth, and he didn't attempt to pull a mic back or anything. He just let me go. And after he was done and signed back off, he says to me, "You ever thought about doing a radio show?" He says, "You're pretty good." And I said, "No." I said, "Actually, I have." So I went down and talked to them, and we went on KLAV for a little while, and I realized in this town we only have somebody, most of the AM is, as you know, is on in your automobile, and here we can get any place in 20 minutes. So if you have an hour show like you have, we can't do the show and have anybody listen front to back. So you had to make it short little pieces of show. I said, "I don't like that." So they said, "Well, have you thought about internet radio? We have the VegasAllNetRadio.com right here out of the studios." I said, "No, I didn't. Let's talk."
And now you're on another adventure, correct?
Yeah. Now we have that show, which you've been on, and so forth, and several of our mutual friends have been on, and so forth. But I'm having a ball, and what's really nice about having a talk radio show, particularly as you and I both know, when it's your show and the guests you get to select, is the amazing knowledge that you pick up, not only about people but what they do. I've learned so many things from people that have been on my show and what they do that I never gave a second thought to, that now I know how they do it and the difficulty of it, and I have a much better appreciation for what they do.
Well, absolutely. I think I want to mention that Stephen Jacobs actually lives in Vegas, and we've been to a lot of events together, and we've met a lot of people together, and I think one of your guests was Lena, and she's the consulate for Sweden. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And she must have been fascinating coming on. But what you're trying to do, what you're doing with your radio show, is that you're bringing in all people from Vegas, and you're bringing in the Vegas atmosphere, and you're getting to the knowledge of Vegas and what Vegas is. And what have you learned through that of Vegas? Because you obviously haven't always lived here. I don't know. How long have you lived in Vegas?
I've lived here full-time since 2008. Now, we had a place over here from 2000 and 2-3 months a year over here and so forth. But for being in Vegas full-time, we became residents in 2008. And since last summer, when I really just haven't had anything that took me out of Vegas, I wanted to really get to know the town. And what has happened is the people that, like yourself and the other people that you and I are friends with, there's a Vegas here that most people have no idea that exists. There's a culture in this town that's out from the Strip, and people in this town that are musicians, entrepreneurs, people that are I never knew that we had 24 councils from 24 different countries in this city. We have people who are opera singers. We have people who are painters. Just a rich fabric of people.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because I didn't realize we had all these councils here, and I sort of, and this started many years ago, and I believe the first one was from Monte Carlo, and that was a few years ago. And it's not a sort of place you'd think you'd have all these consuls here that would sort of be, taking care of each of their countries. But when you think about it, it's an incredible thing, because Vegas is really extremely international. You've got more international people coming here than probably any place in the world because of the gambling.
That's true. And for other reasons, some of the councils told me that they have more people visit Las Vegas than any other place in the United States. The other thing is that we have people who come here that have been dancers, have been entertainers. That's the reason they came to Vegas from all around the world, and have decided this is the best place in the world that they've ever been. And they settle here. They become citizens. It's amazing when you stop and think about some of the entertainers who have traveled all over the world, and this is the place they think is the most desirable place for them to live. I tell people, I don't care what great restaurants you have in your great city. We've got a copy of it here by the same name, except all of ours are simply right next door to one another. You can get to all of them in 10 miles. So.
Well, when you think of it, when you think of these humongous, incredible, beautiful hotels, why would they not have the best restaurants? So you've got a choice. I mean, this is a place, this is amazing, and we're going to talk a little bit about Vegas now, because this is really what you're doing now, is Vegas is definitely 24 hours. You can do anything you want at any time. You can gamble, you can go to a show, you can actually go to downtown Vegas and see the life down there. There's the art museums. There's so much here to do that I don't think it's ever been presented in the right way, because it's always been presented as gambling, but there's so much other things to do here.
Well, and of course, the other thing that most people do know is no matter what your favorite entertainer is, they're going to be here sooner or later. I've told people, I said, if I can get you to live in Vegas for 2 years, I've got you. Because all your entertainers, anyone that you like is going to be here sooner or later. Every restaurant that you've ever heard of in the world has got one copy of it here, okay? We have a culture that's developing that's terrific. But the new Smith Center is fabulous, is it not?
Yes.
And it's headed in a really terrific direction, I think.
It is. It is headed in, I think, it was one of the worst with the real estate and everything, and now it's dropped down to number 5 or something, or 6, and it's really coming back, and I think people are really, starting to, especially when you see the weather back east and you see where you're living. You're going to encourage all your friends to come back. Though it's been a little bit chilly here lately, but that's okay. Now,
that's right. But Nina, we don't have to shovel any of that little chilliness at all.
No, we don't have to shovel any of that snow. Snow, we just look at it on the television, and that's about it. Now, we've done all this. We've gone through all this incredible life of yours. What have you got packed away now? What are you going to do now?
Well, we've got the television show the radio show that's going. We hope to expand on that. We don't know. We're still new to this medium, so I'm not sure. How that happens. How do we get bigger? How do we go? How do we spread our wings even farther? We're trying to get the show to be more popular, more people watch it. We're starting to get some people from around the country that are listening in. I may, who knows? I may team up with you, and we may do a Kathy Lee and Regis show, which I think that would be great.
Oh, am I going to be Kathy Lee, and you're going to be Regis?
Yes. Well,
they're going to turn like, who are those two?
Well, we just need.
Yeah, but why not?
We just need for somebody to buy off on that concept and give us a pilot run. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's a brilliant idea. And I was also just thinking as well, because you said it takes 2 years to actually sort of, get yourself indoctrinated into Las Vegas. So I've got actually 11 months to go.
Oh, that's okay.
I've only been here a year and 1 month. I mean, I'm just a newcomer. I'm kind of, But I must say, when I first got here, it was very difficult. It was so different to what I've ever experienced in my life. And now it's sort of, I'm getting in, I've got friends, I've got you, I've got a lot of people, and a lot of things are happening here now. And I'm starting to like it. And if we could get a TV show, you and I do a Vegas TV show on one of the local channels, wouldn't that be lovely? Here,
Yeah.
I'm like doing an advertisement right now.
Yeah. For those who have any contacts that are listening, this is a pitch, by the way.
Yeah, this is a pitch, guys, out there. I'm pitching. But why not? I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's needed. I think it's needed out there, and I think it's sort of, two energetic people that actually know the business. I've been in the business for so many years that, I'm not saying it's easy for me, because every show is totally different. Like your show is totally different to anybody else's show, because all the things you've done. And how would you encourage, we're having a big problem with our younger generation. I think we as older people have created the problem because we have not encouraged our younger generation to actually fulfill their goals or to help them with their goals. How do we help our younger generation to get into something, like all the things you've done, but obviously into the movie industry and into the, the entertainment industry?
Well, first of all, like everything else, you have to have a desire to go, and you have to have a desire to do. And there's plenty of people and youngsters in this town that are trying to get into the field. Strange that you should say that, and I know that you have no knowledge of this. So this is not a set-up question, but you're going to be quite surprised with this answer. A few weeks ago, I was out and about, and there was a chap who was outside, and I think he was picking up carts for the grocery store or the store or whatever it was to put back in. And he said something to me, and I can't remember whether he took my cart now or whatever happened, but he said something to me. It was very nice. Can I take that cart from you, sir, or something like that? Mm-hmm. And I turned to him. I said, you've got a really nice voice. I said, have you ever done anything with it? And he kind of got blushy, and he says, no, sir, I never have done anything. And I said, well, would you like to do something in that? And he says, oh, I just don't. Nobody's ever asked me about that. And I said, well, here's my card. Email me if you have an interest, and let's talk about it. And he did. After a few emails back and forth, yesterday I had him in the studio, and I had him do a couple of commercials for me. Now, what was really fun about it, Miles did these commercials, and he did quite well, by the way. He didn't hardly bobble at all. I was impressed with him. But my engineer, who's been in the business for 30 years, really knows voices. Actually, John's got a gorgeous voice himself. And without any prompting, John turned after he was all done, and John said, you've got a really good voice to this youngster, okay? Mm-hmm. Which I had to pry the kid off the ceiling. He was so.
How old was he? How old roughly?
I think he's probably 24, 25.
Oh, really area. Young. Oh,
yeah.
My goodness. What an opportunity for him.
So anyway, I said, now we're gonna of course put the music, and we'll clean these commercials up and so forth. And I said, I'm gonna give them to you. You can put them into your portfolio. Now you've got a portfolio, and you can say you've done a commercial. And he signed an agreement and a contract, and he's had his first contract with a radio commercial. And so I told him, I said, we have some more stuff. Maybe we can do some voiceover work and so forth. So those are the kinds of things. You got to reach out to where everybody's something close to you, and that's how you help these kids out. You got to get up close and personal with them.
Yeah, and I think, you're absolutely right. And I think that you actually made the step. You actually went forward. You recognized something, and you recognized, and you didn't know where it was going. You had no idea what would happen. You did not, you knew nothing except because they took your cart. You knew that he had a great voice.
But you
elaborated on it.
Yeah, but he had to make the move, okay? It's the same thing when I met a young actress here in town, and she was quite dynamic, and I talked with her a little bit, and she'd come from northern Nevada and been on a horse ranch and done some other things and grew up that way. Yeah. And she was she's graduating from UNLV, and she wanting to be a model, she wanting to be in entertainment and so forth. And I had her on the show so she could have a tape for her show and so forth. So you gotta find them, and you gotta help them out where you have the facility to help them out.
Yeah, you've got to give them that break. And it's funny you should say, because I had a show for 16 years where I did that. I used to have a show, actually it was every day, some more repeats, but I had a show where it's called Voices of Tomorrow, and it was all the youngsters, and I actually gave them a break on all these different subjects that we did. And they would always come in because none of them were pre-interviewed. I would never pre-interview anybody. And they said, well, what are we going to talk about? And I said, well, you know the subject, and and don't worry about anything. You will answer. And they were so amazing. And I did that for 16 years. Not one of them said something wrong. I did not ever have to cut anything out of a half-hour show of anything of what they said. So I think that we underestimate our younger generation of not knowing, and actually they do know.
I think we've just created at least a quarter of our segment of our show that we're trying to peddle here. I think we should dedicate at least a quarter of a segment of the show to new talent. What do you think?
I think I would love to have somebody with the new talent in all the time. It's funny, I own a small little, I call it my shack, and there's a gentleman living there with his sister, and he was completely 100% down and out. And I gave him the opportunity to start doing a few little odd jobs. And when you see this man before and you see him now, it's two different people. Because he said, you've given me my feeling back again. He said, I now feel like a person again. I just feel like somebody now. And I didn't really do that much. And I think if we all start doing that, and especially in this town, because you've got a lot of the younger people that have come here thinking that they're going to be hired right away with dancing or whatever or singing. And a lot of them end up not getting where they wanted to get. And it's very, very sad with the homeless here, I think.
But I agree with you, and you know the thing is you are correct. There's a lot of youngsters that do come here because there's a lot of singing and dancing jobs here, and but it's like any other field that's high profile like that. You know, you're going to find a lot of competition. And as we all know, well, you came out of that whole Hollywood thing. You yourself were an actress that in your early days that came over and had the thing. And you know the competition is heavy. And you know,
Lord.
And you know you have to. You have to
you have to battle it. And it's funny because when I came over, and I'm not dating myself, but the English accent was not in. It belonged in England. It did not belong in Hollywood. And to fight all that and to do it all, it was quite a challenge. But I never, I'm one of these sort of people, and I'll let our young people know out there, don't give up. Just because somebody says, oh, you can't do it, you're not pretty enough. Looks and figure and weight and all that stuff has nothing to do with where you want to go and what you want to do. Would I be correct in saying that?
Absolutely. You know, all you have to do is decide that you find something. You say, you know, I want to do that. And the next step you have to do is to find out as much as you possibly can find out about that subject. Gather around, get some people who are good coaches or good people who are in the business of whatever that business is. And you can't, you know, you say, you know, I've done so many things in my life. That's because if I find something interesting, I move on to that. If one thing is closed, then that's not the end. That's the beginning of something.
That's absolutely, what a way to say that. That's amazing. Now, Stephen Jacobs, how can anybody get hold of you to get onto your radio show?
Well, all they have to do is they can email me at sjay@jacobsladdershow.com. That's JACOBSLADDERSHOW.com, and just put it directly to me, sj@jacobsladdershow.com, and we'll run from there. That's not a big problem. And
Absolutely.
And of course, if you want to see the show, you can see it on VegasAllNetRadio.com, and it's on at 1 o'clock on Tuesdays Pacific time. Adjust your time schedule to whatever it was. And if you happen to miss that show or any of the other shows, you can go to, again, jacobsladdershow.com, and it'll take you to a page. Just go down the bottom of the page, and all of the shows are archived there. Another thing I like about the Internet is all of our shows are archived.
I'm going to have to cut you off because we got to close the show.
Okay.
We're opening a new one up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much, Stephen Jacobs. We've learned a tremendous amount. And, of course, Ninon Speaks will be back again next week, and we'll have a new... Actually, we're going to have one of our consuls on next week. We're going to have Lena on from Sweden. And, yeah, we're going to have a fabulous show. And thank you so much, Stephen. And we will see you soon. Take care.
Take care, Nina. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Watch the Maxed Out Money Hour Internet TV show program All About Money with your hosts Ninon and Coach Steve every Tuesday evening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central at realcoachingradio.net.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Kids Talk Foundation, a global nonprofit organization providing youth advocacy, television programming, and training services in the United States, along with comprehensive medical and educational services for the developing world. Most recently in Kenya, Africa, where Kids Talk Foundation provides a feeding program, medical care, and educational services to over 1,300 young people each day. Please help our youth and place your donation. Go to www.kidstalk.org.
You're watching and listening to Conscious Evolution Media, shifting global consciousness at consciousevolutionmedia.com.